Hello, Eric here, and today we're gonna do the BBC News ident. Before we even get started, I will go back to the edit page and show you what we're gonna be doing. Alright, welcome to the BBC News. Back to the composition and see what's going on actually. Here I have a breakdown of all the segments that I've created, and as we can zoom in here, you can see that I break it down. First of all, this one takes care of the rings. If I view that one here, you can see that that's only the rings. We also have some bump map and reflections, and the material has been placed on the ring here to give it that kind of look. After that, we're gonna do the globe. That's it, and then we're gonna match that on top of the ring. Later on, we're gonna create the city. If you look closely to the animation, you can see these lines that's connecting the names of the cities. Then we're gonna see how we're gonna use particles to do that, and also do some fine touch rendering and render passes with different passes. We're gonna render this separately and render the globe separately and composite them together. In the final look, we can put some touches to it, and then we can add the logo to it. It looks like it's gonna be a long one, but I'll try and make it short. So let's just get started. Alright, so we're gonna go to the edit mode, and we're gonna quickly create a new composition. So go to the effect library and go to generators and choose solid color, put it here, select it, and then go to clip and then new fusion clip, and that's going to convert it into a fusion composition. So you can just go onto the fusion tab. We certainly don't need this media in, so we're going to delete it. So the first thing we're going to do is to deal with the rings. So put down a background node, so shift spacebar and type in background node. Just view the background node. Change the size of the background. If you go to the image, we want to uncheck auto resolution, and we want to set it to 500 by 500 because we just want some small image. We don't want the full 1080p. We need to work in a 3D environment, so we need a 3D scene. And then if you use the shelf tools here, it's a quick way to create a 3D scene, and later on you can just, so certainly we're going to need a shape. So we're going to put down a shape node, don't connect it yet. And we also need a camera, so it automatically creates a mesh node for you. That's so cool. So we can view our 3D scene right now. Right now, the shape here, we're going to change the shape type to a sphere. You're seeing this because the shading of our viewport is set to flat. So we have to right click and go 3D options, and we can say turn light and on. Quickly, we want to reposition our camera, because right now the camera is sitting in center of scene, so we want to rotate the viewport with holding Alt, and then the middle mouse button will rotate the viewport, and then just the middle mouse button alone can pan around the scene. Alright, so I'm going to rotate it to about here. I like to work in this perspective, and then what I'm going to do is to right click on the perspective here, the word perspective, and we're going to say copy point of view to the 3D camera 1. So now our camera has taken this point of view. We're also going to put down a 3D renderer. That's going to be our final look. This is the basic setup for the scene. And if you view our 3D renderer, even though we turn on light for our viewport, it doesn't mean there's a real light in the scene. So we're going to just create it manually by going to the type directional light. That's it. And then we're gonna connect it to the scene. Now we have some light in the scene, so we're gonna just bring it back a little bit and then rotate it to point down. So I'm gonna click on the rotate tool and just rotate my light so that it looks that way. You can go back to view the render. So you're gonna right click and go to options and say check out underlay. You're gonna uncheck that. So let's just view back our 3D scene. You can go back here and concentrate on creating the rings. So let's just create a mask. The color of the background, let's just choose red, and let's just pipe it into the shape as a material. Left to right, it's going to map it in the U coordinate. So that means from here to here, it's going to map it up and down. We can just go on full side here and then scale this When we reposition it up and down, it's going to create that loop, that ring flow over the sphere. Alright, so now we have to animate this mask. We can of course easily go here and set keyframe on the white position, but I'm gonna show you another way you could go about things. It's about creating a variable and then animating that variable. In that way, you can use one variable to control a lot of animations in your scene. So we're gonna do that by adding a transform. You can use any tool for that, but I prefer to use transform. I'm gonna rename this transform and then call it vars so that I can reference it easily. Now on the transform, I'm gonna go onto the name that says var, right click and add a control to it. We're gonna go edit controls, and the control we're gonna add, we're gonna call it animate, and then it's gonna be a number, and then it's gonna be a slider, and it should be on the control page. That means it should add it to these ones. That's all we need to do. Say okay, then you get the value here. It means we can animate this value and use expression to get this value. Just go ahead and set a keyframe onto the frame 0 and set a keyframe, add animation, and move on to the frame 15 and then set it to 1. That's all we need. So we have it animated. So what we're gonna do is just click on this and we're gonna add expression to the center. And when we create expression to the center, it creates a point because it holds two values, so x, comma, and y. So we're not going to touch the x value, it's only the y value, so we clear the value on the y, and we're going to use expression get value to get a property from here. Just to call the name of the node that we want to get value from, that's vars and semicolon get value. Look closely, the get value is capital G and capital V, and then we say open bracket, close bracket, and inside that we're going to put a quotation, and then inside the quotation we're going to call the name of the variable that's on this, that's animate. So that's the value we want, and that's the expression we need. So once we do that, we can see that it gets the value from it. I think we have an error. It's because the get value method takes in two variables, the property you want to get and the time you want to get it. That means you can get it at any time. So after the quotation, we're going to put a comma to put a second value. That's going to be time. So right now the expression time is just getting the time frames from here. So now you can see that it's getting it, but it's getting it the wrong way. It's taking it from the bottom to the top. We want to reverse this situation. So we're going to go back into the expression, and instead of, we're just going to put minus at the beginning. Let's see, it's going to start from top. Oh, that doesn't work. So we're going to do 1 minus the expression. That means it's going to start from 1 on top here and then minus the expression. We don't want it to be hiding over there. So I think we need to, instead of saying from 1, we can say from 1.2. That's going to shift it up a little bit. That's too far away, so we could say 1.1 to shift it back. So this value, so that's the initial position, is going to be 1.1, and then we're going to subtract whatever value we gain at this time here. So now we got the first ring coming down, and it shouldn't end here. Right now, if you look at the animation, it's only from 0 to 1, so it's only adding 1 to it. So we're going to want to go to frame 15, and instead of 1, we're going to say 1.1 or 1.2. So that's going to take it down off the screen. So we have our animation going on there. Copy this and paste again, and this time we're going to shift this. The second one, we're gonna make it smaller, and now they're all moving at the same time. So what we can do, the good thing about the expression is now we can go into the second one's expression, and after the time we can say time minus 5, so it will delay it 5 frames. 5 is quite too big, so let's make it like 3 frames, delay it like 3 frames. So this is what we're gonna get. And now we get it. That's so cool. But we want the big one to come, we want the small one to come before the big one. So now we're going to make this one rather big, and then we're going to select this one and make it small. So we have that difference in the two. So that creates it for us. Now what we get is the animation only ends here. We want it to loop, so we can do that with keyframe, but I'll show you. Expressions are cool, so why don't we use expression to animate this instead of just using it? So we can right click and remove the animation and rather put an expression on it. And in the expression we're gonna say time times 0.2. Let's see what we get. So it goes once. That's too fast. Let's say time 0.02. Let's see what it does. That's too slow. Too slow. So time 0.5. Let's see. Better. Okay, this is cool. We like this speed. But it's not looping yet. So the way we can loop it is we can say time, we put a percent sign. How many frames do we want to loop it? Let's say 25 frames. So every 25 frames it's gonna do the same thing again. That's what this expression says. So every 25 frames, multiply it by 0.5. And that creates the loop for us. I think it's looping quite too fast now. So why don't we just make it like 40 frames? Every 40 frames. So we have a breathing space and then it comes again. That way is much better. Alright, so the next step, duplicate this sphere, which is going to be our globe inside. Put that one here. So we have two. So now we're going to scale this one a bit. Go to this transform properties and scale it up a bit. That's the ribbons. We're also going to rotate it a little bit. So what we can do is we want to merge this two into one object. So we're going to merge it here instead of putting it in this one. So we can now rotate both of them. So we go to the transform. That means anything we put here is going to get transformed the same way. So we're going to go to the Y and rotate it. No, we're going to rotate it on the X axis a little bit. Just about that. And then we also want to go on the Y a little bit. Oh, yeah. So that's the angle that we want. That's the correct angle. Good. Now if you look closely, we need some details because it's jagged. So we're going to go into the sphere and then I'm going to go to the sphere's property and the subdivisions. We're going to turn it up to like 64. So that's going to give us the smooth shape. Do the same thing to the sphere as well. 64 to make it smooth. Beautiful. Let's create the material for the sphere now. So I'm gonna go into my library. I downloaded the BBC logo and then a world map from Google. If you just Google this one out, it's just a plain gray one on a white background. So if you can view it here right now, if you plug it into it, it's gonna go straight and map it. But we also need a transparency, so we're gonna do that by placing a luma key. So we're just going to sections, tag for luma key, and then we pipe the map into the luma key and then view it. Already it's keying the gray part. Let's key it properly. So we clamp it down and then you see that it's really dark. So these ones are transparent. So what we're gonna do is to just invert it. And the way to take care of this is very simple. We're gonna select the media here. If you view it for a second, we can create a mask, rectangular mask, and we're gonna position it on where we want to get rid of. Now it's just masking everything off, so we're gonna invert that mask. It's gonna take that one off. But the problem is, if we view the luma key, now it gives us a dark area here. It doesn't calculate this as part of the transparency. So that means we can easily fix that by piping the same mask as the mask for the luma. So it calculates it as part of the transparency. And now we can map it to our globe. Let's make some space so we know what we're doing. We show this scenes back. So this is what's going on. Our world map. And then we got our rings. If you view only the globe here, we're going to put downward transform. It's going to be a 3D transform after the globe to rotate that one on the Y. Use the same variable to drive the animation of this one. So let's see how we can do that. So go create expression on the Y and then delete wherever it's there. So just put in time times 36 and that should do the trick. Oh, that's quite too much, so 0.5 then. Yep, I'll buy that, but let's make it 0.8. I don't know why this is okay. So 0.8 is quite cool. So that's the number, just about that. The next step we're gonna do is to create a material for the rings. This is our shape, the rings. That's what we want material on. So bring it here, reflection node. We'll go to reflect and type replace material. So in replace material, this is it. You pipe that one after the object that you want to replace the material. So in this case, it's this object. The node itself is a material node. If you go into the properties, you can see that it has a material. That's why it's showing white. So you can choose any material to replace it. But we don't want to completely replace it. So under the replace mode, we can choose on the red value. Do we want to replace all red, all green, all blue, and all alpha? What we need to do is, instead of replace, we're going to say multiply. So that means it's going to add whatever whatever material is going to add up to it. So that way we maintain the original alpha and the original colors, but we add something to it. That's how we want to add the reflection to it. So now we can pipe in the reflection here. So it's going to add up onto it. It's looking like nothing is happening because we need to feed some environment map into this material. So let's make some space here and create our environment map for the reflection to take effect. So let me say, by the way I do this is to create a fast noise. So shift, type fast noise, just a normal fast noise, and let's just view what it looks like. This is what the fast noise looks like. Let's just pipe into the reflection color material and pipe it into it. That's what the color of the reflection should be. Now we're gonna go into the details of our reflection. Right now we don't really see it, so we're gonna change the scale. First of all, let's go into the reflection, and then what we're gonna do is to turn on the phase on strength. We're gonna pump it up, and also the strength, we're gonna pump it up a little bit and leave the fall off as it is. So what it is we need to work on this material because it's not really reflecting here. So we're gonna bump up the details and unlock the X and Y scale. We're gonna scale it all the way on the X and stretch it. And then we also wanna bump the contrast so you can begin to see that we get some reflection on. If you begin to rotate the scene, you can see the reflection is looking like it's just a material that's been textured on. It doesn't look like reflection, and that's because we just connected it to it. We need to feed it into a spherical environment before. So the way we'll do that is to shift and start type spherical map. It's kind of hard to tell, so you're gonna expand this thing to know. So what we're looking for is sphere map. So we pipe into the spherical map first, and we can see it here the way it looks like before we can then pipe the material map into it. So now it's more like when you move, you can see it reacting as an environment map. That's how to add the environment map. We're going to go into our environment map, and then we're going to change the rotation a little bit so we don't see the seam. Alright, so I think this is kind of cool. This way isn't bad. It's got a nice reflection there. Let's just save it. So we got our reflection going on. So we can go into the fast noise and then increase the brightness if you want more, or decrease it, brightness, the details. Too much detail, reduce the details to get a smooth kind of reflection. Now we can go into our flex material and then play with some of these settings like the phase on strength to reduce it a little bit, or to reduce the strength, overall strength, and also the fall off the way we want it. I think this is kind of cool. Like it this way. Save it. Now let's work on our bump map material and bring in a bump material as well. So bump map material. That's it. If you view it, we need to feed an image to be the bump. We have to create some pattern like the grid. We need a pattern like a grid to use as a bump map. So the way I could do that is to just create a background node. Hover the mouse over it, you can know where the bump should go. We can tell where the bump should go. This is the bump map texture, so we just drag it and connect it to it. So let's create a mask on this one. Turn the background color to white and create a mask on it. And this mask, I'm gonna make it this way, rotate it this way, shift it all the way here, make it really tiny, and then drag it all the way up the screen. This is the kind of thing I want to create. Let's just turn the options on the checkout to black, and I'm gonna copy the same thing. I don't really, the second one we just want to rotate it this way to make an X. Actually, this is what we need. We want to center both of them, so let's create an X. You can add a transform node. That's going to be a 2D transform node. That's it. It's not a 3D transform node. And let's view the transform. And in the transform, we can scale it down. And when you scale down, you can tell it the edges are set to canvas. We can change it to wrap, and that way it's going to create a continuous pattern. So we can scale it all the way down to get this kind of grid that we need. We can also rotate it so it doesn't look straight. So we can scale it all the way more, even down, and we can always come back to this and then create more space in the X, rotate it more, and to take the whole scene, because I don't want to leave those spaces in between. So we're gonna use the diagonal. I think this is how our X should be. Should take the whole space. That's too big. Alright, so we create this kind of pattern. Alright, so we create our X like this. This is the pattern that we want. Let's just see what we get. And that's cool. We'll save it and then feed it into the bump map, and immediately we get the bump map here. So as you can see, it's too spaced out. We need it to be a little bit tinier. So what we can do is to continue to scale down even more. Something about that should do. Okay, about that should do. So if you rotate, save it, rotate in the viewport, you see we have this nice shading going on, and you can increase the size of the bump height scale to get it even more or low. So, and now we're gonna keep it a little bit down like that. That should do. Let's render so far and see what we get. So if you go to the render view, we also want to render with OpenGL renderer. We want to composite our render image onto a background. So we're going to create a background, change the color to white, and then composite, merge it onto it, and let's just view it. We can see we have some dark areas here. We'll take care of that. Also try to blend this globe into the scene. So if you got closer, you can see the material of the globe. It has some edge problems. If you go to the Luma here, you can set it blur up a little bit, and then we can now expand to get rid of the edges. That's how to get rid of the edges. And you can also turn up the gamma. It'll get rid of the edges. Go into the material of the shape itself, and then we're gonna go into the material and we're gonna turn alpha down a bit, and then opacity down a bit. And now let's go back into our 3D scene as we begin to make things look great. It's 3D scene. Let's just view our camera. We're gonna rotate it a little bit so we can see our objects and all that. Good. We also need an ambient light because this light is making everything else dark. So we're gonna add an ambient light. So I type light, and all the lights that comes up, we have ambient light, and we're gonna also add the ambient light to the scene, and that's gonna brighten the overall light. We're gonna bring the intensity down so we don't have any dark areas. See our render, and that's quite cool. I think the globe is quite small, but we should increase the size of the globe a bit. The radius increases a little bit. In our background, we're gonna create a mask on the background like this, and we're gonna take that mask, scale it this way, and then scale it all the way up, and then turn the feathering edge on and make it like 0.5. It gives it a smooth shade of white instead of, we can expand it a little bit, instead of a plain white. This gives us a good look. So we can also go ahead and turn on ambient light up a little bit. We go into the 3D scene here. I think we need to adjust our light again, directional light, just so that we get some dark areas as well. So let's go ahead and next step, create our lines in the background. Make another copy of the sphere, merge it onto the original scene. So we're going to scale it all the way up, and let's get out of the view. We can turn on wireframe, so we can turn the way all the way up. And also we don't want the front bit of it, so we're going to change the angle so it sweeps. We're going to rotate it so we only get this. And what we're going to do is to go down and turn down the subdivisions. We're going to use this as our lines. We're now going to put a displacement 3D. We're going to displace it, and we're going to add it to that. And it needs an image to use as the displacement. So create a fast noise, add it to the scene, and we pipe it into the displacement. Let's see our fast noise. Add some contrast to it. We can also scale it all the way down, and we can go into the displacement and then turn the scale all the way up, and then the bias, we bring it down so they all come from the center. Now on the fast noise, we're gonna turn the sheet on so it animates. Oh sorry, we need to turn the sheet rate instead, and it's too much. Lower it a little bit so that's more like it. Let's render it and see what it looks like. You can change the material on it and make it dark. One thing we need to do also is to set the rendering alpha to sorted. Now when you set it sorted, you can see we're losing some details and we're getting too many wires going on. It's because we need to render this as a wireframe. Look, if you say wireframe, it gets the correct number of splines on that displacement. But if we don't select wireframe, it gives us some extra wires we don't need. But when we select wireframe, it also affects our entire scene. So this is when the render passes comes in. So this means we're gonna render only the wires on a different renderer, and then render the whole scene in a different renderer, and then we can composite both onto each other. So let's see how we can do that quickly. Copy this render and paste it, pipe the scene into it. So that means this is separate from this one. So in this one, we can set it to wireframe, and we can match. That's gonna be underneath it, and we can match it on top of it and view it. So here in this object, we're gonna set the object ID. When you go on the object, you have object ID. Let's set it to like 30, some number that no one is sharing with. And then we can now put override 3D. What override 3D does is we can override anything we want. So what we're gonna override, we're gonna pipe it in here. And let's just view this. In the override, we're gonna set it to limit whatever we're gonna change here to object ID 30. Do visible and say check invisible. That means we are taking this object out. It's not rendering it. We can reverse the situation by copying the override and paste it before and say in the override, don't limit it, do it to all of it. So this override is taking every object that's coming here, shutting the visibility off. So it's off. And then the second override, which is this one, we're gonna rather turn it on and say apply to only the object with the ID 30. So here we shut everything off and then we only select this. When we merge it on top of each other, this is what we get. Good. So we can see right now this is on top of it. We want to change that. The main render should rather be on top of it. So this one goes in first and this one comes in second. That means this one stays on top of it. We can switch things around by bringing these ones all down and taking these ones up. I hope it makes sense. You understand what's going on here. This is our two passes. The main pass. And the reason why you still have this on top of it is because we've checked wireframe here. We need to now uncheck the wireframe property because that is being taken care of, because already this render is converting it to wireframe. So we don't need to turn it up here. But now it's still rendering this object into the scene. So we don't need it here. Copy this over right here. And then we bring it here. Should hide it. If we're gonna turn the visibility off, that should hide it from that scene, because we're hiding the one that says object ID 30. We're hiding it from here before we render. And here we're hiding everything, and then we unhiding this one and then rendering it as wireframe. So it makes sense. So we put it on top of each other, and now this is what we get. We go ahead and quickly add a blur into it, and quickly you see it clearly. So now let's go in and deal with our globe to turn the opacity back up, and then the alpha shouldn't be too much. The next step, I'm going to show you how we can use particles to create random text. We're going to use a 2D text node. So we're going to get that from here. Make some space. So carry all this rendering scene, shift them forward, and let's view what's in the text. I don't want to be viewing the rendering, so we can view both of them here. Start by typing London. Each frame will contain a different name. So I'll go back to frame 1, set a keyframe, and then go to frame 2 and change the CE in there. So like Paris. Step forward again, change it to a different CE. Rome. Step forward, New York. Step forward, or Beijing. And the last CE I'm gonna do is Dubai. We wouldn't want to view our 3D scene alongside. For now, we're gonna turn this one into a wireframe. Or we're gonna turn it so we can see. Just go here, P emitter. We also need a particle render, and that's it. So we can just pipe this into the scene as well. So we get the particles in the scene. Just view only the particles on the other side. So in our particle emitter, we're going to go onto the region, emit from a mesh instead of a sphere. So that's going to be the displacement. Okay, so now you can already see that the particles are being emitted, but we don't want to emit this many particles. So we're going to set a keyframe on the particle emitter, number of particles. We're going to set it to 0 and animate it, and on frame 5 we're going to set it to 10 or whatever number we want. So you can see the particles don't get born after that. They're still being born. After 5, we want to set the particles to 0 instead. And after 0, we want to set the particles to 10. That's how we have to do it. So now we have some few particles being born and it stays there and it goes off. Also want to extend the life of our particle to the time frame. Let's just make it 150 so it should stay longer than our time frame. We want to change our particle style. If you go to the style, we want to change it from point to a bitmap. When you do that, it gives you another input to plug in your text or any image you want to use. We still can't see nothing yet because the particle size must be set in the style. Let's just set it to 1. And now we begin to see our text. We can even make it 2 so we can see it well. And now you can see it's all divide because this text is being animated. Divide is the last one. We can change that by going to the particle emitter and telling it that it should take the image animation into consideration. Over time, we can set it to at particle birth time. That way, we can randomize the text. So if you zoom in, you can see that we have different CEs at different areas. The particle itself is, if you go to the particle emitter or the particle region, you can see this emitting from volume. We can change that to surface. Instead of piping in the displacement from here, we'll rather take it out and then just feed in the 3D objects from here to get the locations. And now we're gonna merge this on top of this. Gonna merge the particles on top of the 3D object. So what we're doing essentially here is, let's just space off. We just go up a little bit. We add in the particles to this sphere, this net. We added the particles to it. This is what we're getting. So now it's on the surface of it. So now we can displace both of them here. That we select, we add another transform node, or we can actually copy the same transform and then paste it in here. So what we're doing is we're having this text being animated as well. So I can carry all of this and bring them here. So now we can disconnect the particle from here. We created a text with the hotel CEs, a particle emitter that takes the text into consideration, and the particle object has been merged together with our spline, and then that is being deformed over here with this noise object, and then they're all being rotated. We can view it in the scene. Let's view our rendered scene. Let's also to change the text color from white to like dark gray there about. Now you have a lot of London going on because we need to randomize the particle seed, and that should take care of it. Randomize the particle seed. The next step we're gonna do is to just animate the camera to zoom out from the globe, and we can add some final touches to it. Go ahead and add a color correction to it. First of all, increase the saturation. Let's just view the output so we know what's going on. It's too much saturation. And then we're gonna also bump up the gain a little bit. Gain it up a little bit. Alright, so we're gonna come here and make some space all the way here. We're gonna duplicate it a couple of times. Offset the rotation a bit. So we're gonna go on the shape itself, and then we're gonna offset it a bit because I don't like where it starts from. Now we're gonna duplicate this a couple of times by using a duplicate node. And the reason why we're using the duplicate node is because we can offset the timing so that the animation can be offset as well. So we'll pipe in the duplicate here, and then let's just view the duplicate for now. And we're gonna make like 3 copies of it. So in the 3 copies, they're all stuck onto each other. So we're gonna go into the duplicate and turn the scale down, and that's gonna scale them down. So as you can see, if you go in the duplicate, you can see that they're stuck in between. You have 3 of them going down, so we can zoom out of it that way. So now let's set our camera to go all the way there. We can't see the camera here until we view the main scene. Yeah, on the sphere itself, we want to go to the sphere and then also give some more. Yeah, that's it. The angle. Go to frame 0. On frame 0, we're going to zoom in. We need to offset. I don't like where I start from again. First of all, let's just see where we're going to end. We want to end about somewhere here. Let's say frame 60. Select the camera and then right click on the translate and say animate translate group. And right click on the rotation. Do the same for it. So now we can go to the beginning and then zoom in to the very first globe inside it. Down there. About. Just only view the 3D view so we can speed up. So we can just play it, and that's what we got. In the duplicate, we can just go ahead and say the time offset, we can set it to this. So that means it delays, but we want to set it forward to like 15 frames. So you can see properly. So you can see this one starts, this one comes, this one comes. So now what we need to do is to fade it down as it goes further. Anything that we animate before the duplicate is going to offset the time. So what we can do is to put a replace material here. Good. And we'll pipe it in here before the duplicate's offset. We're going to go down to the replace mode and change everything to multiply, 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 and alpha multiply as well. And now we're going to go into the material tab and we're going to animate the opacity. After 40 frames, after the globe has lasted for 40 frames, we're going to fade it down. So here we set a keyframe, animate, and go all the way down to like 60 where it ends and shut it down. So this is what we get. Fade, fade, and fade. But now we're losing all the globes, so none is left. That means we can grab this and merge it on top of this, so we have this one in place. It's still staying there, not going anywhere. So if we view this, that means this is going to constantly stay there. As all these globes fades down, the last one is always going to stay there, and it's not going to fade down because that one is coming in here. So we're pretty much done. So the last thing we're going to do is to add the BBC logo on top of it and then add some spotlight to review it. So from here, we want to start showing the BBC logo. So let's go into our bin, drag the logo down here. Let's just view the logo. Or hook the logo on top of it. Let's view the final output. Use the merge transform to scale it down to about there. This is it. And also we want to mask it, so we don't want it to square up. So we're gonna mask it this way. I need it, yeah, that way. It's better. And we can scale it back up a little bit. That's alright. So from 50 or 55, let's say something about there. We fade it to 0. Set a keyframe there. Go forward about to 60 and turn the keyframe, the blend, all the way up to 1. We know it's certainly fading up to here. So all we need to do is to put a little spot here. There's one more thing I need to do. There's supposed to be a light, yellow light that's bouncing, a reddish light that's bouncing off from this angle I saw in the scene. So let's go back to our 3D scene here, and then we're gonna lay down a point light. I want it to point at that direction, so add it to the scene, and we change the color of the point light to something about that reddish, and we're gonna bring it all the way out of the center and point it down there. Let it go back a little bit. Let's just view the output and see what we get. And we also want to go into the 3D view, and in this light we're gonna have to increase that intensity to like 2. So we put it all the way out, that way we can get it all the way out, can get it to bounce off. You can begin to see it being bounced off, so we need to put it all the way out a little bit more. That's it. We're gonna go into shift and look for spotlight. This is a 2D hotspot. Yeah, we want to hook it into a background. We want to hook a background load into the hotspot so we can view the hotspot separately. Turn the background alpha down, and now we can merge it on top of this, so we have the hotspot separately. This way we can put a color correction on the hotspot and then change it to any color that we want. We can begin to animate it that way. So turn the strength down to 0 and go back a little bit. I'm gonna set a keyframe on the strength and go all the way like that, and then go frames forward. Take it down just to let it stay there. And now one thing I can do is I think in this beta edition, when you do 3D scenes, when the scene is too heavy, if you go to the timeline, it doesn't really play smoothly, or it doesn't even render at all. What I suggest you should do is, once you know everything is okay in your composition, you don't want to change anything, then you can begin to cache. I'll just put a transform node. Put a transform node here, and then I rename it, and then I right click it, and then I go to cache to disk. And here I enable cache and I lock the branch. That means I can't make changes down the line, and I can pre-render it. So as it's pre-rendering, you can go back to the edit timeline and it will play smoothly. Thanks for spending time to watch, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, YouTube/VFXBlend, and I'm gonna do more tutorials. Keep the comment down below, and also send in your requests, what special thing that you want to do with DaVinci Infusion. Till next time, it's been Eric, and bye.